3 years ago, these things caused big supply chain issues in the automotive industries. These are passive components. In 2017, specifically the ceramic capacitors, also known as MLCCs, were the culprit. Lots of cars were not built and lots of computers not shipped because of components that you can hardly see with your naked eye. Lots of procurement executives lost many nights of sleep over these problems. But then the problems are mostly caused by passive components. There's no code inside them, and if you find one with the same physical properties, you can simply swap them out. Today, auto and tech have a much bigger problem, a shortage of ICs. In this video, I will explain the problem and discuss 5 potential solutions for the IC dilemma, mostly with a focus on the automotive industry, but what I'm saying should largely apply to other industries as well. Let's get started. Today's computing devices can best be compared to Lego sets. A developer has catalogs of parts and libraries of code to pick from. In order to speed up development and save space on the motherboard, a lot of the code comes pre-packaged in integrated circuits called ICs. The most common types of code packed into ICs are video codecs and audio codecs, but there are many other types. While the ICs save a lot of work, integrating them into the motherboard still is a huge task. In order to do this right, you would need a lot of experience and read through hundreds of pages of data sheets and manuals. With today's short product life cycles, it is not really feasible for engineers to study this in detail and set up the required software routines. So the IC vendors are offering convenient solutions in the form of board support packages or BSP and chip support packages or CSP. These provide software routines in a convenient format that can be plugged into the main software of the motherboard. But there's one huge caveat. As soon as you integrate the BSP and the CSP into the code for your motherboard, you're stuck with the IC vendor. And with the backward compatibility that is required in many industries, you may get stuck with one IC vendor over many product generations. You could argue that this doesn't matter so much because ICs are typically cheap. But then you frequently have shortages and a missing IC that costs $1 prevents a $50,000 car from being built. This gets us to the 5 potential solutions. As we go from 1 through 5, the solutions will become more effective, but also a lot harder to implement. Number 1, determine which ICs are old. Car makers are often using very old ICs. When I say old, the ICs may have been developed 15 or 20 years ago. Making them would require the supply chain to maintain outdated and inefficient equipment. OEMs and automotive suppliers typically work with distributors who often run out of stock. Brokers are a source that is often overlooked. So brokers are companies that buy up excess or obsolete inventory. And some of them have a bad reputation as they mix legit parts with counterfeits in a liberal way. Also, a broker may squeeze you if they sense that you are in desperate need of specific parts. So my recommendation is that you build a relationship to a few select brokers when everything runs smoothly. Let the broker know which old ICs you're still using and have the broker build an inventory for a rainy day. Number 2, build direct relationships to the IC vendors. This may be the most important recommendations of all. I know that it is super convenient to have the tier 1 suppliers take care of everything. But the resulting zoo of ICs, so a wild mix of old and new technology ICs from tons of different vendors, is what got you in trouble in the first place. Talk to the CEOs of the IC vendors, share your product roadmap, and have them suggest an appropriate portfolios of ICs and secure supply with a multi-year outlook. Then direct your tier 1 suppliers to only use ICs from the list approved by you. This will require you to perform a lot of sub-tier supplier management and probably have your tier 1 suppliers lean back and let you handle availability. But I still think it pays off, as you would have a much cleaner portfolio of ICs using modern equipment. Number 3, understand the IC supply chains and de-bottleneck them. This is where things become challenging and where you will need to hire industry experts. Roughly speaking, an IC supply chain starts with a wafer, and there are many different kinds. Next is the foundry that makes the physical ICs. Then you have an OSAT that tests and packages the ICs. Then you have a distributor and the actual IC vendor who between them arrange logistics and programming of the IC with software. The most virulent bottlenecks typically are the availability of wafers and the availability of testing fixtures at the OSAT. These are problems that can be overcome with money, but it will be tricky to find out who needs to be paid to get things going again. Programming of the IC is also a curious affair sometimes. We have seen cases in which ICs traveled halfway across the globe, back and forth, in order to be programmed. Reversing this and having the software travel to the IC can take many weeks out of the supply chain. Number 4, control the sub-tier supply chain. This is where size starts to matter a lot. Consider this. Most of the monopolistic IC vendors that make life so hard for you are actually not such big companies. Most of them are just development houses that don't produce anything. They are fabless, as they say in the industry. They rely on foundries like TSMC, Global Foundries and UMC to actually make the physical IC. And these foundries run pretty strict schedules. The IC vendor will get exactly what is agreed with the foundry, but not more than that. When you have a shortage like right now, pushing the IC vendor is not that effective, as the IC vendor doesn't really control the supply chain. So my recommendation to you is to get direct access to the supply chain, talk to the foundries and the OSATs and secure volumes. Then award all of your future business to IC vendors only under the condition that they use your supply contracts. And you should also move your current IC volume into your supply contract to the extent possible. In order to make this happen, you will need to have industry insiders who know how to strike favorable deals with foundries. And it will cost you money. But if you do it right, you will not lose $50,000 cars because of a missing part that costs $1. Number 5, control the software. So imagine you're Apple and you have a team of really good software developers. Then you change the rules of the game. You develop your own video, image and audio compression algorithms and you're free to deploy them wherever needed. And you bypass traditional IC vendors and have everything done by the foundries exclusively for you. Okay, so it may take a while for car makers to reach this level. Anyway, this was pretty heavy stuff, but as the title of the video says, ICs are a dilemma. And if you have made it this far in the video, this topic may keep you awake at night right now. Should you want me to dive deeper into specific aspects of this, let me know in the comments down below. And as always, I promise to get back to you within 24 hours. And if useful, I may even respond with a dedicated video. Thank you for watching, please subscribe, and I see you in the next one. Bye!